you get a lot of marketers that say, hey, we can grow your business by X by spending money on ads, that may not be at the end of the day profitable.
The real power of direct-to-consumer e-commerce is that you own that relationship with your customer. And so once you've acquired them as a customer, you can continue selling to them.
Hello everyone, I'm here in Franklin, Tennessee. It's an amazing city to visit, and I'm here with a couple of my friends, Kenneth and Bob Strachan, the co-founders of Metacake, your e-commerce growth experts.
There you go.
And yeah, I'm really excited to be talking with both of you, Bob and Ken. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for having me at your awesome offices. I really love coming here. I've been here a few times, and I love your Metacake swag as well. I wear it when I'm in the airport, or not in the airport, in the airplane.
When you're not wearing your swag.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's right. It really helps. But thanks for joining me. Can you tell us about the Metacake story? How did you guys get started, and how did you guys meet each other?
How do we meet each? Okay, so yeah, we're in Franklin, Tennessee. And I grew up in New York City, and Bob grew up on the other side of the world. And so how we ended up here as business partners in Franklin, Tennessee is a very long story. But essentially, like my life has been always about using technology to help businesses do some cool things. And e-commerce was always at the center of that from when I was growing up, and I spent my entire life basically doing that. That brought me down to Franklin, Tennessee from New York 15 years ago. And then at the time I met Bob Strachan, he was doing, he had done a whole bunch of stuff, helping Coke beat Pepsi and like all these things. And we became friends, started doing some business together, and decided to form Metacake in 2011. With the idea of being at the center of e-commerce, technology, sales, marketing, and so we currently do that today. We have services, we have training, and we have capital. So where we acquire e-commerce businesses and make investments in certain technology companies and things like that. In our services business, we've been doing it for over 10 years. So we formed in 2011. We've gotten the opportunity to work with some of the most well-known brands in the world, and really help them. So amazing experience, and we also get the opportunity to teach that to businesses of all kinds all over the world through our training and content, and we also have the opportunity now to leverage that on owned properties as well. So that's a little bit about Metacake. And I don't know, Bob, if you have anything to add to your illustrious career.
Oh, no, not really. I mean, I started my first e-commerce business actually in the late 90s. And I, using Dreamweaver and some of those like early technology. We didn't really have a shopping cart or anything back then. I've just always been passionate about kind of like what Ken was saying, like how can how can businesses use technology to help drive growth? I think I've seen it a lot where, especially in the early days of the internet, I felt like technology really was like the tail wagging the dog. People wanted to pour money into like cool tech, and I think forgot a little bit about customer and brand and just good business practices. So I think one of the core principles that we talk about a lot is healthy growth. Like we really want to help businesses think about how can we grow in a healthy way before we make any decisions about technology or all the cool things we want to do. We want to think about what are the core principles of what drives your business. How can we don't want to forget about the brand. We don't want to forget about the customer. In all the complexity of e-commerce, we want to help businesses succeed.
No, growing business in a healthy way is really well said, Bob. How do you grow a business in a healthy way? I mean, one thing which resonates with me a lot is even before you think about technology, think about how can you grow business in a healthy way. Can you expand more on that?
Yeah, maybe I'll share a few things, and then Ken, I know you've got kind of a framework I know that you teach on, but I think a few things are just some of the things I just mentioned. Like we talk about brand, Another way to say that is story. Like, we really encourage our businesses to have a really good story. That might be just about how the founder started the business to try to help people, do something that they had a pain point with, or, it could be that, there's some cool background to how the original product came around, and really like unpacking that story and making it interesting, telling that story in an interesting way, I think is the core of especially a lot of direct-to-consumer brands that we work with. I think having a great story and a great brand is core. And the reason being is that I think a lot of e-commerce merchants, they don't forget this, but it becomes deprioritized, is the real power of direct-to-consumer e-commerce is that you own that relationship with your customer. And so once you've acquired them as a customer, you can continue selling to them. And I think we see a lot, especially with growing, like smaller and growing e-commerce businesses, that they maybe get good at acquiring customers, but they're coming in the front door and going out the back door. And so I think brand is central to acquiring customers, but also retaining customers and growing that lifetime value. And then I think the other part that we often talk about is margin. Again, that can relate to a whole different parts of your business, like your core kind of cost of goods, to how much you're spending on marketing, to your operations. If you don't have margin, you're not profitable, you're not going to survive, right? Now, obviously, sometimes in the growth phase, you may sacrifice margin for growth. That totally makes sense. But I think we've seen a lot of businesses that, maybe doing $10, $15 million, but really not making money, and that's not sustainable. And so we're often teaching our customers, like, it's really important to think about having a profitable business if you want to sustain long term. So really none of that is about e-commerce, is about website design or e-commerce technology. It's just kind of core business.
But just go into like when you do those things, like when you do marketing, when you do website, like I think in the e-com space, especially in the marketing space, like it's usually growth at all costs. Like you got, everyone's talking about top line revenue. No one talks about bottom line revenue. Right. You get a lot of marketers that say, hey, we can grow your business by X by spending money on ads, that may not be at the end of the day profitable. And it's not really the marketer's job to do that, I don't think. But I think there's this focus on top line, and our focus has been on not just top line, but like overall health and profit being one of those key factors. And so I think that's when it gets into like the tactics, is like how you market, how you build sites, like how you dial in, your margins, like, and a slew of other things.
No, awesome. You guys talked about profitability, talked about branding, which is very important, and also storytelling. These is really great nuggets for anybody listening. So thanks for sharing that, Kenneth. How do you guys work together? I mean, do you guys divide your work between yourselves or with the rest of the team? You guys, let's say if somebody is reporting to you, do you guys have conflict?
We have overlap, but we have different responsibilities. And so Bob's responsibility is client relations and sales. And my responsibility is strategy and branding. That includes our branding and marketing and what we're doing. And there is some overlap inside of that, a lot, depending on the projects that we're working on or the team and those kind of things. But I would say that's kind of like the basic separation of our responsibilities.
Yeah. So you guys divide responsibilities, divide and conquer, but do you ever run into a situation where you have a difference of opinion and conflict, and how do you manage that?
Well, we've been business partners. We've worked together probably 12, 13 years, and we've been in business Metacake for like 11 years or now or more. So there's definitely conflict. In a way, I would say it's like a marriage. Like when you have a partnership like this, like an equal partnership. And so, I think that, and actually I probably spend more time with Ken than I do with my wife, but hopefully she won't be watching this, but she knows that's true. But I think it is. It's like a marriage. I think that there are times when you can be a real support to the other person and encouragement, and also times when there's a challenge and you have disagreement. And I think you just learn over time. In a way, sometimes you pick your battles, and sometimes I think what I've learned a lot from Ken, and I'm definitely a much better man, who I am today because of Ken. He's taught me a lot of things, and So I think you just learn to have open mind as well. Like you feel strongly about something, but you want to listen. And yes, there's disagreement, but I think we've done a pretty good job of always being aligned. I think that's one of the things we've talked about is I think if you have an aligned purpose, then ultimately you can have conflict along the way, but you're still going in the same direction. And if your goals and purpose are aligned, then I think conflict, actually I would argue that I think conflict is a positive thing. We talk a lot about positive tension, this idea that you have two people pushing, one person's pulling in the way of the client, we want the client to be happy, and someone else is pulling in the direction of we need to be profitable. I think that's a really healthy tension. And I think without those kind of conflicts, I don't know that businesses can really be successful. So I think it's a good thing.
I would say with any business partnership, I don't know what your experience here is, but like, I think the aligned purpose is important, like Bob said, but I think the aligned character is kind of important or really important too. So like, you have the same convictions and morals and even maybe life view and some of these things that are aligned, that the way you get to the end result is the same. Like one person doesn't, because I think if you have completely different ideas for how you should get there with regard to like how you do your life, like character, worldview, etc., I think you're going to be like conflicting constantly. And since the journey is like the entire thing, I just think that that's one big part of it.
It really helps. Purpose and vision really makes a big difference. What kind of customers come to Metacake, and what kind of customers do you look for? Who's your ideal customer?
Bob probably has a lot more to say than me, but in my mind, our ideal customer is so there might be a revenue number, right? Like the brand with momentum, that is willing and believes in where they're going and willing to commit resources to that. So I think the willingness is really important. So momentum is key because you need to have a business that can support investment. So for us, that is, we don't have a hard number, but it might be anything as low as 6 figures up to like 9 figures. We work with brands in that gamut. So momentum is key. And then the ability to and desire to invest to achieve some sort of level that they haven't achieved yet. Because there's a lot of brands in that category that don't want to give the time, money, effort, commitments, whatever that may be. And it's not just money. It's like wanting to, it's, even if you pay someone to do something, you have to be committed to doing that thing, right? So I would say those two factors are the most important factors. There are some other ones, like we try and work with brands that want to be brands and can be brands. And by being a brand, I mean like having a great product, having some sort of story or something surrounding that you can use to create a brand and connect with a customer on. So some of those factors are important too.
So Bob, do you help customers right from get-go, like starting from design thinking to UX to development, and do you do the whole gamut and also marketing?
Yeah, I mean, different clients have different needs. Sometimes we're just coming in one specific area. Maybe we're helping them with conversion rate optimization, something very specific. Other times we've got a brand, maybe like a funded startup, that they have a logo and a style guide, and they want to launch their eCommerce store, and they want to hit X million dollars in the first 2 years. And so we'll help them through the whole planning phase. We'll do all the UX, UI, we'll do all the visual design, we'll do the development, and then we'll launch the marketing as well. So we can do all of that. And actually, in some cases, we'll just get hired maybe to consult. They may have an internal team, an internal design team, or they may have a design agency they work with, and maybe internal dev team, but they just need the expertise of like, how do we create a roadmap to reach our goals, and we can come in and help them with that.
Awesome. One last question. There's a lot of change happening in the digital world, and technology is changing every day. How do you guys keep yourself updated with what's going on?
That is a good question. So I think one of the challenges for service providers is that, because in order to be innovating, you have to be trying things and failing. And for most agencies and service providers, you get hired to not fail, right? So I think there's a natural like kind of
tension.
Not even tension. I think they don't coexist. Like I don't think you can innovate and only do client work. So the way we do that is we own a lot. We own our own brands. We spend a lot on our own marketing. We are doing the things that we're saying, and then we're working with brands, implementing philosophies that are kind of like timeless that we've learned over time, and so that I think so when it comes to technology, I think when you're doing those things, you're learning the technology, but not even just technology, right? Like there's changing trends, like one day Facebook is the place to get you can get all your new customers, and you shouldn't just with Facebook, but like that could be where a lot of people did that for a long time, and then the next day it doesn't work. So I don't think chasing technology is like a really smart strategy for anyone. I think it's there's a little bit of the nature of you need to do some of that to be successful, but I do think a lot of people just chase technology when in fact chasing the right timeless strategies that work no matter what technology, I believe, is like where you spend your time.
Awesome. Bob, anything you want to add to that? How do you keep yourself updated and how do you keep learning?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that things like just books and podcasts, I listen to a lot of podcasts just across the space. Not all of them are in e-commerce and necessarily tech or marketing focused, but just a range of podcasts just to kind of keep my brain thinking. But yeah, I think I agree with Ken. I do think the fundamentals, I think it's easy to get distracted by all the shiny new tools and toys. But I think what's great is when you're pursuing fundamentals and you see how a tool can really line up with that and help you accelerate or achieve a goal in a much more efficient manner, then I think that's when technology can get really exciting.
Yeah, stick to the basics. Any book or podcast you recommend to the audience?
I don't know, are there any good e-commerce podcasts you listen to?
Ken runs an e-commerce podcast as well. Why don't
well, we run an agency podcast.
Agency podcast, yeah.
And we are launching an e-commerce podcast. So the agency podcast is called Agency Exposed. And you can check that out if you'd like to learn about how the struggles of a service business, how we solve problems. That's what we share on that podcast. We are launching an e-commerce podcast called Grow Time. So that will be coming out soon. But we also have a YouTube channel where we do tons of e-commerce content. Now, you didn't ask me if I had, well, you did ask me if I had a podcast, but you want a different book or a podcast. The ones that I listen most to are usually in the mindset or performance category. So business and performance is all I listen to. I'm usually not listening to any in the weeds tactical podcasts, I would say. So I love Ed Milet's podcast. I listen to that quite a bit. I love Tony Robbins and Jim Rohn and all that. And I think that I think there's a lot of marketing principles attached to those. And so look, when you go into a problem in a technology platform and you have the mindset that, I guess if I hit a brick wall, I'm not going to push through it, then you'll fail. So I believe that some of those kind of things actually help in that world. I don't listen to a lot of personally like tactical podcasts, but I do know there's a lot of great ones. Molly Pittman has a great one. I can
That's awesome.
Give you more if you want.
Cool. Thank you so much, Bob, and thank you, Ken. It's been great talking to both of you. It's been great learning for me as well, so appreciate it. And thanks, Bob.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me here.
Glad you're here.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you for coming to Franklin.
Absolutely. Thank you. Franklin's a great place.
Yes. Anytime. Bye.